Hey, welcome back to Freedom Decoded. We are Demir and Carey Bentley. We have ditched our 9-to-5, started our own business, moved abroad, and today we are passionate about showing other professionals and business owners how to live their own unconventional life in the most productive way possible. And you can learn more about us at lifehackmethod.com. So today we are talking about a super cool topic. This is a podcast, by the way, where we are letting our hair down. We are giving you a peek behind the curtain of what we are actually doing inside our own life and our own business. And today we are talking about how we created our zero email business.
Yeah. You know what's funny is this is like a unicorn for certain people. Like, that doesn't exist.
That's not possible.
That's not possible. You can't have, or they just feel like. And maybe rightly so, because the marketing world is filled with like broken promises where people are promising quick money and easy results. And that doesn't exist. In fact, You and I rail about that all the time, that people are promising things that don't exist. Don't get us started on like automated income. And just like that freaks. I'm so angry about the fact that people promise that.
What we're talking about when we say zero email, it's not like we never receive an email and never send an email. What we're talking about is in order to run our business, we don't communicate internally with any of our employees via email.
And I would say 99.99% of our client communications also happen outside of email.
Right.
Actually, let's give a sense. What does a zero email company look like? I mean, for me, the clearest sort of manifestation of that is that I process my inbox once per week. So people say batching 3-4 times per day. I batch my email once per week for 30 minutes. And usually I'm tackling about 15 to 20 emails. So just for a scale, I've got clients who are getting 300-400 emails per day.
Right, that's a lot.
And it doesn't let up on Saturday. Maybe they'll get 100 emails per day on Saturday. So they come in on Monday and they've got,
well, and there's something about just seeing that like that number in the thousands of unread emails or even just total emails in your inbox that's it's so like just
crushing.
Yes. It makes you feel like you're behind or that there's somebody that needs your input or needs to be responded to and you're like letting them down by not responding to them. And so just the feeling of looking at our inboxes and like right now I just checked mine and there's 14 emails right now in my inbox. So
I've got 9.
Yeah.
I've got 9 emails in my inbox.
And most of them could just probably be erased and like all the important things are already done.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure there's people out there immediately thinking, well, yeah, you must have some really, non-email related business. Maybe you're like an edge case. So we're coaches. We're in a service business.
Yes,
right.
We communicate for a living.
we coach and serve people and communicate with them for a living, right? We currently have about 750 active clients. Mm-hmm. So we're in a service business with 750 active clients and I get less than 20 emails per week. That's the promise of a zero email lifestyle.
Yes. So really quick, I think what our current team setup is, because I think that's important to go over.
We don't have hundreds of clients.
Well, we don't have hundreds of team members. We do have hundreds of clients.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep. Our current our team setup, we don't have like a huge team, is 3 full-time workers, 3 part-time workers, and about 5 what I would consider project-based contractors that they would quote me a project and I use them a couple times a year or something like that.
Yeah.
So like, my guy who does the taxes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, graphic designer using a couple times a year.
Web developer, like that kind of thing. So more project-based people and then more like part-time and then full-time workers. So we try to keep the team super light. I know, some people have like, just them and 1 assistant, so it's even smaller. And they have huge businesses. Unfortunately for us, we haven't figured out how to go that small yet. But I think compared to a lot of people in the space, we are still pretty tight.
I think this in itself is illustrative of our approach, right? Whether people acknowledge it or not, I think we've come to believe that headcount is a sign of how successful your business is. Right? Oh, we have 300 employees. We have 400 employees. And I got sucked into that too. Like I thought that was just so great. And now I'm like, no, I think I forget, it's Atlassian or something. There's a company out there that has 50 employees and makes billions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's it. Like, that is the dream. Like, making tons of money with like no middle management layer.
Right.
Very little communication overhead, like instead of like a steam engine, this giant like tanker, it's like a nimble little boat.
That's how we've been able to keep a good profit margin.
Yes.
Versus having sort of like razor thin profit margins. Like that's always been our goal, is to be able to like really actually make the business work for us in terms of making the kind of profit we want to be making.
But it's more than just money too. Selfishly, it means that we don't have a lot of communication overhead. And when it comes time to do a team meeting, we're on the phone with 5 people, not 50 people.
Right.
Or we don't have a middle management layer where somehow we need to reach the front lines by communicating through these 5 managers.
Yeah, the more people there are, the more communication actually needs to happen. So I think what you're saying is we've reduced total amount of communication we have to have just by having a smaller team.
Yes. Which then means that has the knock-on effect to what we're going to talk about today,
Exactly. You want to start like as if you can have fewer team members, there's just fewer numbers of communications that have to happen.
Yeah.
A fewer number.
So maybe that could be our setup.
Yeah.
If from a setup perspective, we believe that, and this will come back later, I think, in our conversation. We believe that every hire is a failure.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean the people we hired, by the way, Harley,
No.
Aiden,
They're amazing. Our team's
we're not
amazing.
talking about you guys. What I'm saying is, if we had to hire somebody, it was a failure of us to think cleverly enough to fill that need for the client without hiring
somebody else. Yeah.
A human being.
Right.
And that keeps us in a brain space where instead of automatically thinking, we'll just hire somebody to solve that problem, we will think for 50 hours how to solve that problem before we even consider whether we're going to hire somebody.
Yeah, we try really hard with automation and those sorts of things that can help us sort of like make the human component less necessary.
Yeah.
For sure. But like, I think also a good point to make is that we don't strive to email people a lot. Like we think that email is sort of a non-optimal form of communication. I mean, it's kind of a lose-lose, right?
Yeah.
Like you always want an immediate response to whatever email you're sending, but like you're never going to get that. So then you're sort of like sending an email and then you're just waiting for the response, and no party is really happy because then the person receiving it's like they don't want to be answering email. Like no one likes to answer email.
Yeah, like nobody in the world when they send an email from me is like, oh goody, oh my god, I get to send I get to stop what I'm doing and open an email and annoyingly like henpeck out my message and try to take something that frankly it's hard to write and write it out, and like the process of even writing the email sucks.
It sucks. Yeah.
But then when you push send is when the real anxiety starts.
Right. Are they going to respond? When are they going to respond? Am I going to have to follow up with this person to get them to respond?
Oh, now it's on me? Wait, so I need something from Carey, but it's on me to constantly like follow up and follow up and follow up, and like just pause and take a breath and think about that. You don't want to receive that email, but they also don't want to send it.
Right.
Like,
that's true.
Nobody in this entire interchange is saying, oh, goody.
Right. Yeah. And I think that sort of has to do with how email evolved, right? Because it was designed as just a way to communicate faster, right? So the existing way of communicating was like secretaries running notes to people's desks inside the company, and then, or like picking up the phone and like playing phone tag. So email compared to that feels like, the equivalent of getting a faster horse. So you're riding a slow horse, you're getting a faster horse. You're just doing the same exact thing, but just like faster. Yeah, but then I think the problem with email became that because it was so much faster and easier, people did a lot more of it than they needed to. Because it cost them nothing. It's like, okay, just, 10 questions equals 10 emails to the same person in one day, rather than just like, stopping by their office and asking all 10 at once.
I mean, I think this epitomizes the whole issue that we're having society-wide with the impact of technology.
Yes.
Right? We're finally starting to, the chickens are coming home to roost, and we're realizing what, like, for example, even Spotify. Spotify is such a great technology. You can listen to any song, anytime, anywhere, right? But you lost that enjoyment of sort of walking up, like putting on a record, like being forced to listen to the whole album, not just the one song that you like the most, and actually develop a taste and a vibe for the whole record and what the artist was trying to.
And since you bought the whole record, you're listening to it like multiple times.
Yeah.
You're sharing with your friends. You're like, look, I got the record. Like,
That
do you want to
becomes
come
the
over?
soundtrack of the summer because you just like are so into that. So we're starting to realize that even with these conveniences, something is lost, and it sort of reauthors the texture of like our reality.
And there's weird other externalities that happen that we couldn't have predicted because of the way humans interact socially. Like, so for example, if I send you an email at like 8 p.m. and then you get it because you're checking your mail at the dinner table, and then you respond really quick, and then I get it back and I'm like, oh, great, like Demir will respond to my emails at 8. And so then I start doing a little bit more, and now I have an expectation that you're going to respond.
Yeah.
And so then you were just trying to do me a favor that one time, but now it's like this expectation, and now you're like working all the time, and everybody's always on.
And I mean, I hate it when managers come to me and say, "Well, they don't have to respond.
They don't have to."
And it's like this is the Louis C.K. issue. I'm going to talk honest here,
Oh man.
right? Like, listen, you can, if you exert influence over somebody,
Yes.
and even if you ask them permission, you need to recognize that like that person might have a strong incentive not to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And say, no, actually, I don't want your emails at 8.
No one's gonna
9,
tell that
10
to their
o'clock,
boss.
because it's their boss.
Right.
Like there's a way you fear retribution, right?
Yeah,
You're
even
like,
if they say there's not going to be, like, there might be some kind of.
Be honest with me. It's like you have to be responsible
Right.
for understanding the power that you that you
Have
have
over
and
your team,
the influence that you exert over
and
people.
it's the non-communicated influence, right? Because we're very attuned to people's social gestures and style of behavior. I mean, I actually had bosses when I worked in corporate actually tell me I was doing a good job when they saw all of us emailing together at 11:30 at night. Like, they were like, "I'm so glad everyone is online emailing." I'm like.
That's the
They
exact.
actually said it. So, but yeah, like even if they didn't actually say it, there was this sort of like non-verbalized expectation that if the boss was online, you should be online.
Yeah. I mean, but I just listen. If somebody thinks that's a good thing, they're almost beyond our reach. Like, I can't even.
We're not
speak to
even
you.
talking. We're
Like,
talking about like a normal, regular person.
The person I get mad about is like, well, no, I don't want my team. I don't want my team to feel that they
Right.
have to email me.
Or even I tell my team not to email me, but I am.
do anyways.
Right.
It's like you really got to step up and recognize that like you're setting the tone, and you have to really dig for those unspoken, like what do they call that? Like just the things that build up, the culture that you build up, like little by little, and it just sort of accrues. What you had a word for that? I can't remember.
I don't remember. Vicious cycle.
Yeah, well, like it's just like this sort of culture that builds up around communication.
And I want to talk about that too when we talk about what we've done, because it's sort of, you can't just set a culture in place and then like set it and forget it. It's like you have to work on it continually.
Okay, we've the promise of this is pretty big.
Yeah.
Like 0 email. Like I guess we have to talk about the problem with email is the failure of the imagination to imagine what could come after it.
Yeah.
Because-
What else are you going to use?
And I think you sort of said this earlier. If you went back to the horse and carriage times and talked about what the next mode of communication could be, the only thing people could imagine would be a faster horse.
A super horse.
They weren't thinking trains. They weren't thinking,
automobiles.
like hypertubes or hyperloops, right?
No.
They were just thinking like faster horses, right?
Right.
And so, it really is hard to see past like what could be after email. So what's the world look like post email?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a completely different way of communicating, where instead of the emphasis being on communication, ad hoc communication, the emphasis is on defending your team's deep work time and keeping communications relegated to essentially a project management platform where they're inside each task.
Yeah.
Right? And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I think what's necessary to do that, and by the way, this is not like, we are not the only ones thinking this. Like, actually, Cal Newport just published a book called A World Without Email.
Yep,
and he
great
gives
book.
a lot of examples of companies that are already doing also what Demir and I have done here at Lifehack Method with tremendous results.
Yeah.
So this has now been proven, which is awesome.
Yeah. So and $1 billion companies are doing
yeah,
this.
yeah.
So anybody out there who's thinking, well, this is just a niche thing that small people can get away with.
No, big companies. It's
big
even
companies.
better. It's even better when big companies do it. The reason why often big companies don't is because the change has to come from the top. Like,
Yes.
it is not one individual worker's job to create the culture of productivity at their company.
I'm going to pause you on that because that gets into our first point. So here's what we're going to talk about. Like, the invariable question here for this is, how do you, if you're listening, or how did we, maybe, how did we create a zero email inbox? And the number one is what you said, which is it's got to start from the top. You have to have management that is not afraid to have a point of view on how things should work.
On how you should work, on how you should go about your day, because otherwise you're just going to default to like whatever people want to do. Like, you're in charge of your own personal productivity, and it's just like you communicate however you want, you schedule meetings however you want, you just like work however you want. And like, that's not going to be effective because you're going to default to like what creates the most results at the individual level, not what creates the most results for the organization.
This just makes my blood boil. I mean, I get so angry about this. Let me give you an analogy that sets up how absurd I think it is for a management team to take a hands-off approach to not just communications, but productivity. It's like saying to all the drivers on all the roads in your country, just do whatever. Whatever works for you.
Right.
Just drive however you think you should drive, and we'll all sort of like come together, and in aggregate we'll figure out how this whole roads thing works.
But
how is that country
going to work? Well, I think there's actually been a really ancient study done on this called like the curse of the commons or something like that, where basically if a bunch of farmers were given a common area with which to graze their horses, they would all just outgraze it because for the personal farmer, like their personal interest is to just like get as much of that grass as possible for their horses, even though they're basically destroying it for the long run. Like in the long run, if nobody gets it, that's obviously worse.
Tragedy of the commons, I think.
Thank you. Tragedy of the commons. And so basically, like at the individual level, like you're not going to create that increase in value for the whole group.
But also, there's just certain policy decisions and government policy, but also company policy that cannot be made from the bottom up. They have to be made from the top down.
Exactly.
And safe roads are one. You need to say, what does a stop sign look like, right? Should you stop?
And what does it mean? Like, what are the rules for that stop sign?
What are the rules? Like, who goes first? And that's how you have safe, happy drivers who know what to expect and know how to be on the roads. And so, to me, the absurdity that makes my blood boil is when you leave your workers in your company, like, to their own devices to figure this out, you're going to have roads with tons of car crashes.
Right.
And that's basically what productivity in companies is. A massive pileup and car crash that just like descends to the lowest common denominator. So all the roads basically look like India or Indonesia, just like a free-for-all, right? Like, or drive on whatever side of the road you want to.
It would be worse than that. It would be worse than that. Well, okay. So what we did was, in terms of starting from the top and creating that team-wide culture of the kind of productivity workflow we wanted to see, was we decided on, first of all, that everybody's deep work time needed to be prioritized.
Yes.
What does that mean? That means that we're defending people's time around anything that creates value. Basically, their time to actually get work done.
Yes.
So we don't like it when people communicate. If they're communicating about something, it means something has gone wrong, right? Our goal is for them to be spending as much time as possible actually doing the work that has been assigned to them.
Yeah. And this is where I think people totally lose perspective on deep work and shallow work. And we'll have people constantly coming up to us and saying, are my meetings deep work? And again, just quick analogy. If you're buying sausages from a sausage company, right? You know that for every dollar you paid, some portion of that dollar went to things that aren't sausages, right?
Yeah.
Went to like, there have to be meetings at the sausage factory and like marketing and strategy
and
like,
whatever.
Maintenancing. You understand that for the dollar you paid for the sausage, some portion of that did not go to just inputs for sausage, right?
The meat, yeah.
But here's the thing, like you're willing to accept that as a portion of it, because at the end of the day, it's a part and parcel of getting that sausage. But if I told you, Carey, that you don't get a sausage, but what I'll give you is all the meetings,
the cost for all the meetings and emails, and
you
all
would
that.
say like, no, I'm willing to pay for some of that shallow work to happen so that I can get the sausage. But if you took away the sausage and tried to give me the other part, I will never pay for that. So just think for yourself. Like, and this is what we do when we think about it, is like, what is the sausage? What really shows up to the client? that they're paying for, and what is the stuff that they'll begrudgingly pay for because they know it's necessary to provide them with
and
the sausage.
we are actively always looking for ways to improve our service such that our client realizes we've improved it, not so that like it's just working better for us or whatever. Like it's about, we're actually about cutting anything out of the process that's not actually being perceived by the client as value added.
But recognizing that it's like almost like margins, you're never going to cost.
No, it's never going to cost to cut out everything. Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. But you always seek to reduce it, right?
And such. So then the point being that meetings are shallow work.
Yes. I mean, yes, meetings are shallow, but writ large, we have a perspective as a company around like a radical clarity around what's the sausage and what's the input, like what's the overhead to make the sausage happen. And that really helps us create a cleavage where we it's not about valued work versus unvalued work, but it really helps us understand like how to zone in for each and every one of our employees and say, what do they do that really makes it to the client like as sausage, right?
And going along with that, by the way, we only do have one team meeting a week, which we frequently cancel because of holidays or simply because we just don't feel the need to hold it. So we keep it super lean.
Yeah. So and another big part of that is we have a policy, and this is something that we teach a lot to the teams that we train, is we have a 48-hour minimum turnaround policy, and that helps to serve to reduce the impact on people's deep work, because it means that if I'm going to assign you something, Carey, I do just by default, I am not going to expect anything sooner than a 48-hour turnaround time.
Yeah, and this is crucial.
We aim for a week. Right?
Yeah,
most
or more.
Time we aim for a week.
As far out as possible. Yeah, but it's never expected to be immediate.
Yeah, so it is extremely rare in our company that anybody is asking for something that they need in less than a 48-hour turnaround time, and it has just transformed the culture.
Yeah, because the people aren't stressed and worried that all of a sudden something's going to hit them and they have to drop what they were doing and shift and focus on something new. And so that's made a huge difference.
Yeah, where they're not constantly like disrupting their plan to like fight fires that somebody else is dropping on them.
So I think the second major thing that we've done is we have almost 100% of our internal communications via our task management platform, which for us is Asana. Doesn't have to be Asana. We have clients using
Microsoft Planner,
like Trello, Monday, ClickUp, like all these
Jira.
Things work. But yeah, we personally use Asana. And what it does is it helps you keep all of your communications inside of the exact task and project that pertains to them. So there's almost like a little mini communications thread about that thing, and they're not scattered over email or Slack. By the way, we don't like Slack. We don't have Slack. We don't use Slack. Yeah. So it's all inside the task management platform.
It's hard to understate like how important this has been. I mean, we can talk about it till we're blue in the face, and it's so funny. We'll talk to people. I have friends who know I'm a productivity coach, good friends of mine. I've known them for years. And, I say, hey, you should get onto Asana or something like that. And they're like, yeah, whatever, Demir, I knew you when you were popping zits, or whatever, like, and then they'll get onto it and be like, oh my God, like, I didn't realize, why didn't you tell me? It's like, dude, I've been telling you.
This is the thing. This is the number one thing that will make it possible for you to disconnect from your email inbox, if that is your goal. Because, it's not even that. It's like there's accountability now for people not doing tasks on time. Like it's easier to follow up with people about things.
To understand when something is overdue.
Anything like that. It's makes delegating super easy because people have like recurring tasks that they do every month, and I never have to tell them to do it. Like literally never. I delegate it once and then it's just like done.
This is, again, just something that really, it doesn't piss me off. I just feel sad about it, or just confused. People, I think the definition of a productivity app is so easy to understand. Like a good productivity app helps you do something that used to take you 10 hours and now cuts it down to 1, right? So it should be a no-brainer. Like a productivity app that is great should not be hard for you to suss out if it's great or not. You should be able to I can't live without this thing because literally when I'm without this thing, I go 10 times slower. But email or like Slack, a lot of people will tell me oh my God, our email server went down for a day and it was the most productive day that I've ever had.
Same thing with Slack.
You're actually more productive when email gets shut down. There's actually a famous study where Slack went down for 48, 24 hours.
Yeah.
And people measurably were more productive during that period. So I just want to like send a message in a bottle to everybody out there. Like, it is not hard to figure out whether something is a good productivity app or not. Like, turn it off for a day. Was it the best day you ever had in your life or the worst day? I mean, it really is that simple.
And people also get mired down in the features of what each app has. Like, oh, can it connect with my calendar? And like, can it do this little thing? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, the most important thing is like, can it manage your tasks? Can it help you delegate tasks? Can it help you prioritize tasks? Like, the actual features don't matter nearly as much.
And also just that it's taking, like, it's basically eliminating 30 things and bringing it down into one thing, and all of the time saving and stress saving and cognitive load saving. So it's like when people say Asana, I'm just thinking, man, we're talking about Asana has taken what used to be your to-do list, your email inbox, your texts and messages, a ton of emails that no longer need to happen. And it is all now happening in like one fraction of the time in one simple streamlined workflow that just, once you get it, makes intuitive sense. I feel like this is a commercial for Asana now, but no, really, it's for people out there that are like, 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other. I'll
just keep my pen and paper to-do list. By the way, speaking of commercials, I do have my new Asana course is launched. It is out. You can buy it. I'll put the link in the description. It will teach you how to use Asana.
Yes. Actually, since we're on that, we were not actually going to create a course on that because we were just like, there's a lot of stuff online and blah, blah. That is the number one thing people requested from us. We just kept getting it again and again. Like, Carey, can you please create like an Asana training course? And so we did create that. I would say, if I can plug for you and just like scratch your back a little bit, one of the best things is that when you go to Asana, they're never going to tell you what not to do or what their technology is not good at or how you should not use it. One of the cool things about your course is that you've got a point of view. Like, this is good in Asana and this is useless.
Yep.
Use it for this. Don't use it for this. Use it in this way. Don't use it in this way. And I think that's what people are really clamoring for. They just want somebody to tell them, like, how should I use this thing? And you really do.
Yes, it's all about how to make yourself successful, not just how to use Asana, but how to make yourself successful using Asana so that you really feel the productivity increase and you feel like working is easier and your team feels it too.
Totally. So we'll drop a link to that in the chat box if you're looking. Now, so I just want to recap. The first thing we were talking about, how did we create a zero email business? We started by saying that we started from the top. We have a clear point of view, a clear culture and communication policy. We just covered, driving internal communications away from email and chat into a platform like Asana. What's the third one?
Well, I want to cover in number 2 really quickly.
Sorry, my bad.
That there's always exceptions, right? So the question we always get was like, well, what about really urgent communications? Because there always are some urgent communications, and we have that too, just like any other team. So we have a specific channel for those urgent communications, so that instead of having to check all channels and check Asana like all the time, we know that if something is truly urgent and needs to be dealt with immediately, it's going to go through that channel, which for us and our team is WhatsApp.
Yep.
Right? So if we get a text message on WhatsApp, we're like, oh crap, like I better check that right away because that's something urgent.
And it seems off. If you texted me with something casual, it would seem off. Right?
Well, and that we also reinforce that. If someone does text something casual, we say, hey, can you put this in Asana?
Yes.
Because this doesn't go in WhatsApp. Like, this is something I can do later, which means I don't want to see it.
And that's what I call policing the boundaries, but not policing it like a jackass, but like gently policing.
Yeah, just like, hey, can you please put that in Asana?
And you do this to me, by the way. Like, sometimes I get too familiar with you because we're married, and I'll say, well, I'll put something like, can you do this for me? And
can you pay my personal trainer this amount, please? I'm like, please put this in Asana.
Put this in Asana, yeah.
All right. So in terms of the actual pieces of technology that we use to make it possible for us to move away from email, it is actually critical to use technology in order to move away from email. So there's 3 sort of core pieces of technology. We already talked about Asana for all task management. We already talked about WhatsApp, which is our channel for urgent communication.
Yep.
And the third is screencasting.
Yeah.
Screencasting can be done with a variety of screencasting tools like Zoom, Loom, Snagit, Camtasia, all sorts of, there's tons of free ones, tons of paid ones, but screencasting, super crucial.
It's hard because like screencasting is one of those things like once you've got it, you're like, oh my God, this is so easy. This is as easy as like leaving a voice message on somebody's voice.
Right.
I mean, it's so easy.
Yep.
But from the outside, people are like, that's like speaking, Mandarin Chinese. it really is one of those paper tigers that from the outside looks, oh my God, how could I ever do this? And the second you do it, you're like, why was I...
Like, now I'm going to do it 10 times a day. This is amazing.
This is amazing and so easy. And why was I overcomplicating it? So we're not going to get into a full breakdown of screencasting now. I can just say that screencasting is the closest thing to telepathy that we have in modern productivity. And it's going to be the hottest, like in 5 years from now, it's going to be so common and that people are going to wonder how we ever lived without it. So for those of you who are not on the screencasting, like cool kids table, like come on over. The water's fine.
And we have a whole video tutorial on screencasting, which we will also put in the description.
Cool.
And the fourth thing that has been critical to us moving away from an email culture is simply redirecting our external communications, meaning communications with clients, with vendors, with just like, affiliates or other people who don't work for us, redirecting all of those communications into the optimal channel for that type of communication.
Yeah, which I mean, that might sound like a little bit like fancy, but it takes a little bit of like, first you got to start with the premise that every single email is a failure.
Yeah. And
that is a weird foreign like concept for people. They're like, what do you mean? Like every single email is a failure? But it means that email is, as we said at the top, a lose-lose communication. Your client does not want to type you out that email, and you do not want to receive it.
For example, if a client emails us with a question, we go back and we say like, well, how could we have answered this question for the client without him having to email us about it?
Yes.
So if he has a question about our program or how to use a piece of software or how something works, it's like we go back to the FAQ section and we write it in there. Like we make sure. Yeah. And that way we see our number of communications that we even receive going down because that client is able to see it in exactly the moment they need to see it.
Exactly.
Rather than having to wait for us to respond.
Exactly. So here's some good examples. Like one is onboarding. I mean, to me, actually, let me back up and just say you have to go upstream of your inbox. So classic analogy is like you go into a doctor and you're having a symptom. The doctor's going to give you some medicine to treat the symptom, but then they're quickly going to pivot to trying to actually treat the cause, right? And so often like emails are just symptoms. They're never causes, right? And so, when somebody comes to me and they have a question, often I go upstream and say, what did I fail to do that they had to open an email and send me an email to resolve this? I would say the number one place that people can look to is onboarding their client, right? When you have a new client, just like in a new relationship, that is the moment to tell them how to communicate with you and how to have the optimal communication moment. If you allow them to start falling into bad communication channels, good luck trying to change that.
It's not going to be perceived as a value add either.
Yeah.
So one of the ways we do that is by setting expectations. Mm-hmm. For example, we have an email autoresponder that lets anybody who emails us know that they are not going to be able to expect a fast response, that it's going to be a week, Yeah. So
well, and to know that they have other places. So we always position it as a win-win, right? So we're never, and it's not a load of BS. Like we're actually saying, hey, this is the way that we can communicate together, that you're going to get fast, quality responses, but we're also going to be able to do the work that you came to us to do. And there's always a trade-off. And so we want to really find that place where you can get the responses you need rapidly and get high quality responses.
Right.
But, here's the thing, Carey. People always think that everybody wants an instant response from you. That's not actually true. What people need is radical certainty about when they're going to get a response.
Yeah, because then they can relax.
Yes.
And be like, okay, I'm not going to hear from Demir for a week, so I'm good. I mean, another thing too is like, how can you improve the quality of communication overall? So instead of getting a client emailing you saying like, oh, I'm struggling with like procrastination, like how can I improve it? Instead, all of our client communication is happening through dedicated forum threads, one for each client. So that if you get someone asking you that, you can look, first of all, ask it in the thread.
Yeah.
But then you can look at her thread and say like, okay, like I see that this person is XYZ profession. They've had this issue before. They have this family situation. And it helps give that context to your response.
Yep.
That otherwise you're like, well, why are, what type of procrastination are we talking about? Like, what's going on in your life? Like, you would need to spend so much time just getting the background needed. And now it's all there conveniently in a thread.
Yeah. So these are the different channels that we use, right? We use forum threads. So each client that we have has a forum thread where we have sort of, instead of disconnected emails, it's almost like having the same chain email that we're responding to again and again. So we find that the forum thread is actually a better way for that communication to happen, so much better than email, but it actually feels and a lot like email in the sense that they ask a question.
It's more like it's like a Facebook thread, more like a
Exactly.
Facebook comment thread.
But one where it's just between me and you.
Right. It's private.
Yeah, it's private, right? We also have, I say Facebook is our miscellany because some people want to say, some people want to reach out to us and say, Demir and Carey, have you seen this book? Have you seen this app? Great. Don't send me an email. Put it in the Facebook.
Yeah, because that way other people get value from it too.
Exactly. And if I reply and say, hey, you know what I love about this? You know what I don't love about this? Yes, you and I communicated, but then the whole group saw it as well and got an opportunity to get value. Of course, we talked about Asana. We don't have to say that again. But if, for example, you're a client, but I'm going to bring you into it on a closer project that we're going to work on, I would actually bring you into Asana and we would work in there, right? We have an FAQ site. In fact, one of our goals for the last 2 years has been to create the best FAQ anywhere, because at the end of the day, let's be honest, if we're really honest about it, when you've given an answer like 100 times, the quality that 101st and second time starts to go down because you're just like, I've answered this question so many times.
And so you want to give like the best quality response you can, do it once,
Knock
and
it
then
out of
have
the
it
park.
available for everybody.
Totally. What else?
Gosh, I mean, obviously we have live calls as well. So that's
Yes.
the opportunity. So say if you get like a really good question via the Facebook group or any channel, even the forum, you could say like, hey, I'm actually going to respond to this live. Like
Yeah.
it's such a good question that I want to respond to it and give everybody there on that call the chance to hear the response.
Or it's a question that has like a component, like, can you show me how to set X or Y up? It's like emailing that would be impossibly hard. It's better to just be like, hey, can you come to the next live call that's on? And we have one every single week. So it's easy to just be like, yo, can I answer this in this coming week's live call, right?
Yeah.
And of course, we have an internal website. So often people, let me just pause and connect the thread, because people have so many limitations understanding, well, if it's not email, then what is it? And I'll just be very clear. Forum, Facebook, Asana, live calls, FAQ website, internal website resources. Like these are the kinds of things that together can be much better sort of avenue for communicating with people externally.
Yep. And then even expectations and boundaries. Like we tell clients in advance that we don't help them with, for example, Excel spreadsheets.
Yes.
We'll help them with Google Sheets issues, but never Excel spreadsheet issues. It's just a boundary we've set for ourselves because we're not Excel experts and we don't provide any of our materials in Excel. We only use Google Sheets. And so we just tell people like, sorry, like you'll have to contact somebody else about that.
But again, doesn't that just go back to like this issue of like people don't want an instant response, they want security and certainty. And I feel like when you tell somebody we don't support Excel, period, and you just draw that line, part of you doesn't want to do that because you don't want to lose a client,
You don't want to say
want to say no.
Yeah.
But when you do, that client has immediate clarity. Like, okay, well, I'm not going to email them about this then. I'm going to go somewhere else and get that support. So before we wrap up, I guess I just want to say, like, you've worked in like email cultures and then we have a zero email culture. So if you were just going to like give a flavor of like, what does it feel like before and after to actually have a zero email culture?
No, I just feel like I'm on top of my work.
Yeah.
I don't feel like any balls have been dropped. I feel like everybody who needs a response from me has actually gotten that response. I don't feel like I'm letting anybody down. I feel like I understand the status of not only my own tasks, but all of my team's tasks at any moment without having to ask them. It's just it's just available. I can check. I feel like I don't have to project manage nearly as much. I'm not chasing people down for work. Like it just feels like getting work done is so much easier. I mean, I spend the vast majority of my day actually moving the ball forward rather than communicating.
Yeah. And I feel like for me, the big difference is that I actually work during the work day. So like every work day during working hours, I'm getting deep work done. It used to be, I remember when I worked in finance, that I would spend all day just email ping-ponging. And then I'd have to find time either early in the morning or late at night or on weekends to do the real value.
I remember doing that too. Yeah, on weekends, I'm like, okay, finally, I get a chance to work.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to a cafe and like actually get some work done.
And I remember I'd be like, what is it? What's so magical about like working on the weekends? I just feel I can really get things done. There's nothing magical, right?
Nobody's bothering
It's just that nobody's bothering you with email. So I think this is sort of like a message as we wrap this up. You know, I think zero email cultures are going to be radically common in the future, or modified, where internally we don't do email, but maybe externally we do email. But I think this is the next wave. I really want to encourage anybody who's curious about it to have hope. This is one of those things where people are like, could I really dare to dream that I could have this? Yes, you can.
You can have it. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Please check out our other podcasts, either on YouTube or whatever platform you use to listen to podcasts. And you can learn more about us at lifehackmethod.com.